At the outset of the second stage, we see the English chariot having its wheels come off. It says both the right and the left. If this represents the UK, it certainly doesn't look well for them in the second stage or under a lighter form of lockdown. Things don't go too well for them, but they are not alone in this, because the African chariot is about to follow the same example. Right before it does so, Asterix says this: "It seems like a lot of mishaps, don't you think, Obelix?" So he's starting to notice that there are just so many things going wrong with this. And I don't know how many people are actually looking at this coronavirus pandemic thinking the same. They're just puzzled by the chaos and the confusion. Out of nowhere, things just go wrong. Back to the African chariot, they are wheel-to-wheel coronavirus, and things are looking really good. I mean, they are just about to pass this coronavirus character. So what makes Africa look so good? Let's go look at the stats here. According to Africa News, there are only 16,265 cases in Africa. This was last updated on the 15th of April, and there are 873 deaths, and here it gives them by country, and you can see that things are looking really good for Africa compared to a country like the USA, for instance. But let's put this into further perspective. There are 1.216 billion people living in Africa, according to Google anyway. So when you compare the total amount of people living on this continent to how many are infected and have died from it, things are looking really good for Africa. And this is in stage 2. So maybe this is indicative that things are looking this good for Africa. We can slack a bit in terms of our restrictions. That could be what this is all about, the proposed stages for South Africa, where we will slack a bit. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm definitely expecting things to go terribly wrong for Africa. And again, I'd like to point out that things are fixed in this race. So this whole pandemic, with all its stats and figures, seem to be fixed as well by the powers that be, the powers that are trying to achieve their agenda of unification and control. So there Africa goes crashing, and now the press is full of it. They are chanting coronavirus, and here is where we see Obelix making reference to this. He's saying that this chanting of coronavirus is getting annoying. And then Julius Caesar says that when they chant his name, they are actually chanting Rome, and when they chant Rome, they're actually chanting Caesar. So Corona, crown. So that's the bottom line of all of this. Also part of stage 2, with its lighter measures of lockdown, we see Asterix and Obelix stopping by a restaurant to have some wild boar. It seems like there's a lot more freedom in stage 2, but it has come at a price. Now everybody is way ahead of them, and they have to look for the quickest route to Sena Julia. So a negative consequence for the freedom of stage 2 lockdown. And in the next frame, there is this shortcut mentioned, but they first have to drink some wine in order to take it. Then off they go. These people are also against the Roman, by the way. And here they're on this red gravel road, and they are getting more red as they travel on it. Eventually they rejoin the charioteers. Here we have this coronavirus billboard, as it were. We can see now that the sponsor of this race is not only sponsoring the race, but he has also offered help to the coronavirus. And I had a look at this in the Crisis Lupus video, and at long last they get to Sena Julia, the end of the second stage, but now they are all in the streets and they are terribly lost, looking for the inn. Eventually they get to the piazza of this city, and they're still looking for the inn. They're all saying, listen, we can't see it. And then this lady tells them where the inn is, and says that only residents are allowed to park their chariots in the historic city center. So some restrictions here towards the end. But before we go to the inn, there is a horse betting of sorts that takes place on the sideline here. This guy says, a race around the piazza. What a great idea. And then the yellow block explains that it's this famous horse race. At first I was going to pass by this, but then I figured, let me just go and look up horse races that are taking place between now and June, which is when this Crisis Lupus character is supposed to come to the front with the solution. Now the 10 biggest horse races in the world are listed on this website. As I was reading through this, I wondered which one could it be referring to, if at all. Now all the dates for these races are given, and none of them seem to correlate with the story until I got right to the bottom, where it says that the Kentucky Derby takes place on the first Saturday in May. So back to our comic here, could this be a reference marker in the comic to real time and when we are expected to reach this milestone? Now at the inn, everybody is dejected. They are really like down and out, complaining about the mishaps of the race, and some of them want to go home. But then we see the dark side of the Cimbri. They are now celebrating secretly the withdrawal and the mishaps that have taken place, and they are saying tomorrow we can have fun with those that are left. It is at the end of this stage, the second one, that Obelix is seen taking the first drop of this garum nectar, and as a consequence his face lights up and she tells him before the vestibulum, past the atrium. So it sounds like heart problems to me. And while he's busy washing out his mouth, he overhears this conversation between Bacillus, coronavirus's co-pilot, and this chap that's handing him a bag of money. But he doesn't understand what exactly the money is about. He just knows that there is something happening behind the scenes. And that's the end of the second stage.